Sony Xperia 1 Mark IV versus the Sony Xperia 1 Mark V. What's the difference? And should you consider upgrading? Now, when you take a look at both of these phones, a lot of stuff is very similar. Now, they changed up the way the little camera bar looks on the back. They did take away the time of flight sensor, which I haven't really noticed too much of a difference there. So, maybe that's one of the reasons, but they did probably need to do that to make room for the newer camera that's on the Xperia 1 Mark V. Yes. So when you've got three cameras on the back here, basically, you've got a primary camera, you've got the ultra wide, you've got the telephoto. The telephoto and the ultra wide are the same as far as what I can tell, but there's a new primary camera. It has a new sensor. The sensor is 1.7 times larger than the one we have in the Xperia 1 Mark IV. And I do think that it shows, at least from the pictures I've taken so far. So we went from a 12 megapixel camera to, you're going to see different things when you read, but you'll see where it says 52 megapixel camera, but apparently only 48 megapixels are available. So some materials say 48 megapixels. Either way, I've been pretty happy with it so far. Now, I've only been using the phone for about 5 days. So this is more of a, okay, what's the difference? What's changed? And what's better about this phone that we take a look at it this year? So the biggest thing, other than the camera, is what's under the hood, which is the Snapdragon 8 Generation 2. So the Xperia 1 Mark V, Snapdragon 8 Generation 2. Complete game changer. And I was excited about this phone way, like months ago. As soon as I got my hands on the OnePlus 11, basically in January, and got a chance to test it out, I was excited about the Xperia 1 Mark V, knowing it was going to get that chip because it just changed so much. We had a lot of problems last year with the Snapdragon 8 Generation 1 that's in the Xperia 1 Mark IV. This phone, when you're recording video outdoors, 80, 90 degrees, sucker would overheat on me in like 3.5 minutes tops. It was bad. I even bought an external cooler and put it on it, and I could still only get about 5 minutes when it was 90 degrees outside. So mostly, I had a lot of problems with that. I made a lot of videos about it, and I really told people stay away from the Xperia 1 Mark IV if you want to use it for video. If you want to use it for the camera, I think it has a really good camera still. It's got a 12 megapixel camera. Basically, it's 12, 12, 12 for the primary, the ultra wide, and the telephoto. But the Xperia 1 Mark IV does have a good camera system on it. However, just from my experience very shortly, the last couple of days, the photos I've taken, I have been more impressed with the quality, the clarity, the overall colors, the vibrancy, the way that the sensor looks. I think that it looks better on the Xperia 1 Mark V. Also, it's supposed to be twice as good at low light photography, which I've not been able to test out yet. I've never been much of a low light guy, but here's the thing. When it comes to low light photography with the Sonys, they don't do that enhancement stuff like you get with the iPhones and the Samsungs, where basically they try and make a nighttime picture look like it's the daytime. So what you get instead is you get more realistic looking lower light photos. Like you can see better, you get more clarity. It does help out with like the HDR and stuff. I don't really take a lot of photos in low light. I'm not going outside to take a picture down the street. I just take pictures during the day. So yeah, I'll test this out whenever I get my full review and do that for the Xperia 1 Mark V. But yeah, it's supposed to be better for that. Better for skin tones. That's important. That's been a big push over the last couple of years. The Google Pixel phones really pushed that ahead with the Pixel 6 about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago coming up on. So yeah, there's been a big push from Samsung, from iPhone, from Google, everybody, and Sony is doing the same thing. And of course, we want that. We want more accurate color representation, more accurate skin tone representation, because it's more true to life. And ultimately, when you have cameras, that's what you want. You want the most true to life images possible. So that's why I like Sony's. Even taking low light photos, it's more true to life. It's not a photo where it looks like you took it during the daytime, but it happened at night. Like, I don't know. Maybe some people like that. I don't really care for it. So that Snapdragon 8 Generation 2, it helps out a lot. And I think that even auto mode and basic mode when it comes to taking photography, when it comes to taking photos, I think is improved. I think that maybe they put a little bit more emphasis on some of the computational photography stuff when it comes to the auto and basic mode. Of course, whenever you go into the other modes, it's completely manual and hands-on and all that stuff. But yes, it does feel like there's been some improvement there. So Snapdragon 8 Generation 2, better for power, better for heat, 60% better thermals. So if you were using Xperia 1 Mark IV and it got hot on you all the time, just doing basically stuff that shouldn't get hot, right? And if you try to do things like play games, you try to take photos, you have the camera app open, it would turn into a giant scorcher. It was so bad that Sony in their updates had to put a warning every time you open the camera saying, warning, it could get hot and it could burn you. So yeah, that wasn't really a fix. It was just more like a warning, like we told you so. But yeah, that's not on the Xperia 1 Mark V, thank goodness. And I haven't got it to overheat on me yet. Even when I shot a 21.5-minute 4K video outside, yeah, it didn't even overheat on me. So there's been there's been significant improvement there. And also it's better for battery life. You will get better battery life. And that's something that's nice because the Xperia 1 Mark IV had okay battery life, nothing to write home about. It is better this year. And I think it should stretch and last most people the day. Here's the issue. When it comes to like recording a bunch of video, that's where it's really going to drain the battery. If you're trying to shoot like an hour's worth of video, don't expect to get all day battery life on your phone. It's going to tank the battery pretty good. But overall, battery life's better, heat management's improved, and overall performance, it feels good. Also, the haptic feedback feels better on the screen. I don't know if it's a placebo effect, but typing on the Xperia 1 Mark V feels better than on the 4. Like the 4, it felt, I don't know, maybe it's like a real strong rebound haptics. Whenever you would type it, it would feel not as quite as distinct or as tight as you would get with like a Google or Samsung phone. So the haptic feedback does feel better. I do enjoy the typing experience more on the Mark V than I do on the Mark IV. Screen's basically the same. I don't know of any changes there. Still a 6.5, 4K, 120 hertz refresh rate. It's a brilliant screen. And sRGB is there, all that great stuff. It's basically like a professional quality display. And I like the Sony screens. And it doesn't, so it's not an LTPO or LTPS. And if you're wondering what that means, it doesn't throttle down. So the Samsungs and the OnePlus are very notable for this, especially in like the S23 Ultra. It'll throttle down to basically like 1 hertz, which is like 1 refresh cycle per second. What that does is it saves on the battery life when you're just looking at the home screen. Like right now, it's still running at 120 hertz. That basically it's refreshing the screen 120 times in 1 second. That does drain the battery faster. But also, it's always like that. It's not bouncing back between 1 and 30 and 60 and 90. It's a constant 120. And I kind of like that. I think it's more pro or professional level kind of stuff, as more focus on maybe consumerism. I think this is still a very niche phone. I mean, it's something that's very expensive. If you take a look at last year, one big thing that's changed, the Xperia 1 Mark IV in the States last year was $1599. It was crazy expensive. I bought the international model. I rocked that one. I was not getting 5G. I didn't really care because the 4G LTE was working perfectly fine. I'm getting 5G with the Xperia 1 Mark V, and I'm getting it on AT&T, which is something I wasn't really, I was crossing my fingers. Like I was really hoping it was going to work. So I am getting 5G on AT&T. It gets 5G with T-Mobile. I'm really excited about that. So that's something that's cool. So connectivity seems better, especially I didn't get the US model, so I don't know how good 5G was, but I think even it still didn't work on AT&T if I remember correctly. So there are some changes there. I think the network stuff is better. I think the modem is better. Of course, it's more improved over last year, so that's good. It has Gorilla Glass Victus 2. So on the Xperia 1 Mark IV, you have Gorilla Glass Victus on the front and the back. On the Xperia 1 Mark V, you have Victus 2 on the front and the back. And one thing you can see, it's smooth on the Xperia 1 Mark IV. You can't really see here, but there actually is some texture. I'll try and see if I can catch that on video. And it's textured glass. And it actually gives it some grip. It's got these little contour lines on the side all the way around the phone too that add for grip, which is really important because the Xperia 1 Mark IV, kind of a slippery phone. But, of course, the colors have changed too. There's no more purple. So rest in peace, purple Sony Xperia. I do have the black one. This is what Sony sent me. There's also a khaki green, and there's some sort of like a white color. And you have a couple different color options, the Xperia 1 Mark IV. I know there's the purple, there's the cream color, there's black, and I think there might have been one more. I think there was 4, but either way. So the color is always good, always strong. The selfie camera is the exact same on this one. They didn't make any changes. Still, it's a 12 megapixel camera, and it's capable of shooting 4K at 30 frames per second. It doesn't do 60. I wish it did. I would try it out for recording my videos. I always record in 4K 60 with my iPhone. And on the back, you get, of course, the 120 frames per second recording in 4K. That's one of the selling points for this. So that's really cool. You can also record 4K in 24 frames. 25 frames, 30 frames, and 60 frames. So if you want to go out there and do your cinematography stuff and really want to shoot some video, this is probably just about the best you can get when it comes to a smartphone. And that's the same goes for both of them. But of course, you do have the new sensor in the Xperia 1 Mark 5. Again, it's like 1.7 times larger, and that allows it to pull in more light, and you get better quality when it comes to basically video and photos. So that's something that's nice. They both have the headphone jack, both baseline 256 gigabytes of storage. Both have 12 gigabytes of RAM, no 8 gigabytes, just 12. There's supposed to be a 512 model, and you've got, of course, the expandable SD card slot. So very easy to pop the tray out on the bottom, take that out. You can put up to a 1 terabyte SD card in both of them. So that's nice. I believe for the Xperia 1 Mark IV, I believe it's 1 terabyte as well. And then USB-C charging, both charge at 30 watts, both have wireless charging and reverse wireless charging. So that's nice too. So we've gone through this. There's not a whole lot of changes, but where the changes that are there really matter a lot. Again, the new chip really changes a lot. We've got the new modem, the new chip. It's got 60% more thermal, so you got a lot better protection for the heat. And also the camera, the new primary camera is supposed to use 20% less energy. So uses less energy, so that's going to create less heat, uses less power, which means you can use it longer. Plus that Snapdragon 8 Generation 2 gives you better power efficiency across the board for everything. And then you get better thermals. So that's a lot of really good things all wrapped up in one package. It really affects everything. Of course, battery life too. Both have a 5,000 milliamp battery. So big takeaways, new chip, new primary camera, and those two things I think are really, really important and big. Of course, we did lose the time of flight sensor for the Xperia 1 Mark V. And then we have the Gorilla Glass Victus 2 on the front and the back. And yeah, that's pretty much it. There's like not a whole lot of things that have really changed, but also what's changed is the price tag. So you can get the Xperia 1 Mark V. You can actually pre-order it now. It's going to be $13.99 in the US. So $200 cheaper than last year. That's substantial. It was really hard for me to say, hey, you should probably go out and get the Xperia 1 Mark IV and pay $15.99 for it. And I actually recommended a lot of people not get it because, well, the heat issues were just so bad. So if you didn't really care about extended gameplay for high-end gaming, because that would make the phone get really hot, and if you didn't care about shooting 4K video, or if you didn't really care about shooting video period, then yeah, it was a great phone. But I really had a lot of problems with it last year because we're talking about a 4K video high-end, like all this crazy stuff that it's supposed to be able to do from a content creation perspective. How do you have a content creator phone that's really can do all these crazy things, but then it overheats in just a couple minutes? Like, that's not cool. It's basically useless. For $1,600, that's insane. So they basically fixed all that. They fixed the thermal problems, the heat problems that plagued last year's model, and they basically cleaned it up a little bit, gave the textured stuff on the back and on the sides, new camera sensor on it, and yeah, they lowered the price $200. Those are all things we look at as a win. Now, I know some people are like, I'm tired of this design. I actually really like this design. It's my favorite. It has the 21:9 cinematic aspect ratio, especially for 4K. It's great for media consumption because you're watching it all in its native format when you're watching stuff in like 4K anyway. So I like that. I really enjoy the phone. It's my favorite. It took me a long time to finally spend the money to get a Sony phone, but starting with the Xperia 1 Mark III, I fell in love with it, but the selfie camera wasn't that great. They really improved the selfie camera in the Xperia 1 Mark IV. The same one we have here now, and they fixed all the problems and complaints that I had last year. It's not very normal to have all of the complaints you had basically fixed. Actually, there's one. There's one complaint that I really don't like about this phone. The flashlight sucks. Yes. So when it comes to the flashlight, more often than not, I'm using the front screen because the front screen does get really, really bright, especially in low light. So I normally just use the front part of the screen for the flashlight because the flashlight on this thing is quite terrible. I think it's because it's actually a pretty good LED for a flash, and I think it's better with softer tones and light in that way. So I think that's why it's not very good as a really bright flashlight, but as far as being a flash for photography and stuff, it is good. So that also, they took away the LED notification. Now, I know some people really like the LED notification on the Xperia 1 Mark IV. As a BlackBerry guy, I always appreciated that, but there is hope on the horizon. So with Android 14, they're actually bringing flash LED. So the LED flash will flash like that crazy app that people had on their iPhones for like the last 15 years. So you can have it where your screen will flash. So your screen will flash for a flash notification, and also the LED, the flash on the back. So that's coming with Android 14. I've already tested it out on the Pixel series phones. So it's kind of neat. I know some people like that stuff. So while the traditional little red dot, little LED notification is gone on the Xperia 1 Mark 5. That will be coming with Android 14. Now, I wish that they would extend the software policy. It's okay for me. I mean, it's 2 operating system updates, 3 years of security patches. I think that's the bare minimum. I mean, it basically guarantees it's good for 3 years. And I mean, it would be nice considering the price tag you're paying for this. It's more premium. It's a high-end phone. You would expect that it would be covered longer. But I guess the way they look at it is maybe most people don't hold on to it that long because there's always new changes. Like, I get a new one every year. I don't hold on to it for 2 years. I don't hold on for 3 years. So I'm lucky to hit the manufacturer's warranty on this, much less the software update. So yeah, I know some people that do hold on to them for a long time though. And I really think in 2023, we should at least be at 3 years of operating system updates. And even if it was still 3 years security patches, maybe 3 years of 4 year security patches, that would be better. So it is it is kind of lagging behind in that department. Of course, they're not always the fastest with software updates. Nothing's really changed between the two of these, but I think there's enough meaningful stuff here to address the idea of updating. Like if you really like using your phone for video stuff and you had a lot of problems with overheating and you have the money in your pocket, then yes, it is a huge upgrade. As far as performance, the battery life has improved, the heat issues have been improved, no more overheating, the video stuff is better, it's got the new camera sensor. If you like all those things, then totally hop on board. But what's also nice, you can actually get the Xperia 1 Mark IV significantly cheaper than when it came out. I think you get them for like $700 brand new, at least the international model on Amazon, at least from when I was looking recently. So if you wanted to get into a Sony, and if you aren't too concerned about that, and it has gotten better with some software updates and some throttling since the Xperia 1 Mark IV's come out, but for me, it's just very frustrating trying to use the video and then it getting hot. But hey, I went out and I shot tons, like half an hour of video on and off at my son's soccer game, but it was like 75 degrees the other day, and it held up pretty well. So if you're in a cooler climate, if you're not in a really hot place, then it probably still works mostly okay, especially with the updates. But really, when it comes to the video camera, it's like a night and day difference for the heat and the performance on the phone with the Xperia 1 Mark V. So I think overall, I think there are enough reasons to upgrade. I think you'll probably be happy with it. But again, it's a very, very expensive phone. So I don't want to be like, hey guys, go out and spend all your hard-earned money and get this year-over-year upgrade. Because yeah, most people might have be perfectly happy with the Mark IV. So I'm not saying you can't continue using the Mark IV. I'm not saying it's a bad phone. But for me, they basically listened and fixed everything that I was concerned about with this phone, and it's basically made it my ideal phone because I love the Xperia 1 Mark IV minus those issues. Now this one for me is fantastic. So that's all I've got in this video. I just want to do the rundown, the comparison, talk about both of them and tell you what's changed, what's new, is it worth the updates and all that stuff. I will have my full review coming on the Xperia 1 Mark V probably about another week. I've got to go out and shoot some more video. I got to go shoot some more photos, especially low light, nighttime. Really get out there, and it's just been raining so much here, especially in Houston. Almost every day since I've had this phone, it's rained. Now it was kind of bright today, but I was not able to get out and go do any photography stuff today. So it is coming. When I get my full review, it will be very extensive. I will cover that stuff, and we'll go from there. But I really wanted to make this video because I've had a lot of questions from people. Is it worth upgrading? What are the differences? What's changed? Hopefully I addressed that for you in this video and it gave you the answers that you wanted. So that's all I got. If you have any questions or comments, please go to the comments section. I'll do my best to get back with you. If you enjoyed the video, if you found this helpful, if you like these sort of things, if you like the Sony content, then please hit the like and the subscribe button and the little notification bell if you want updates when new videos come out, which is every day. I put out new videos every day, sometimes 2, you never know. And on occasion 3. So I stay pretty busy with that. But that's all I got. As always, thanks for being here. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you guys next time.